So the first is that, and again, always clear in hindsight, people paid too much for property. So it's often said the one mistake you can't correct is paying too much. Once you do that, you can't go back and change it.
Right.
So unfortunately, just about everybody who purchased the property in the second half of 21 and most of 22 probably paid too much for it. The second thing is when you couple that with many of those people using bridge debt. So what does that mean? It means it's short-term debt, typically 3 years or less. A lot of times it has a floating rate loan. So for anybody who knows where interest rates were in 2021 or 2022, you probably know they're in a much different spot now. So that means that your mortgage payment is a lot higher than it would have been back then. And three, insurance premiums. The insurance market has changed substantially in the last, 20 months or so. And because of that, premiums have went up drastically in many markets, especially in coastal markets, but even in non-coastal markets. And the fourth is operating expenses have continued to rise while operating income, rents, in many cases have flattened or went down. So all of a sudden, people who are projecting, oh, I'm going to go in here and push the rents to this, haven't been able to do that because there's an affordability constraint in many of these markets. And people are at a breaking point. They simply can't afford to pay more because their wages aren't keeping up with the rent increases. But the expense increases on the properties are still there. So it's kind of a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm if you're a buyer, probably not if you're a seller. Let me rephrase that.
There you go. There you go. So then what are people doing now? Because, there's blood in the streets, as some people would probably say. What's
Yeah, great question. Well, I think if you're a seller that has a bridge loan with a maturity this year or next year, it's probably a lot of hoping and praying. Many of those sellers are trying to execute the business plan if they've been successful or unsuccessful at it. But the reality is the market's changed substantially since many of these deals were purchased. So even with the best efforts, sometimes the plan just may not be practical at this point, and you need to adjust. A lot of them are working out modifications with lenders. They're going to the lender and saying, look, I know my maturity is coming up. We're not in a position to refinance. We're not in a position to sell without taking a big loss. What can we do? And so far, a lot of the lenders have been playing ball. They've been saying, okay, we understand the market's changed. Let's